This is going to be a hopefully quick, off-the-cuff reading. Well, not an entire reading of this article. Anybody who knows Vanity Fair articles knows they can go on for miles, and we'd be here for hours if I were to read the whole thing. Anyway, I'm going to read some snippets and just talk about how, although this article has some disturbing accounts in it and details some dark behavior on the part of Arab royalty, it made me laugh. And the reason why it made me laugh is because it's such a ridiculous example of the clash of cultures, of what can happen when multiculturalism is forced down everyone's throat in the West, and how basically nothing to anyone's interest or benefit comes out of it. But of course, we're still going to go on with this experiment because we're going to, for whatever reason. If you're already perusing the article while I'm babbling here, you've probably read the headline, which asks, "Why do Dubai's princesses keep trying to escape?" Now, the thing is, if you've been following any of the immigration from the third world, second world to the first world, and you have 2 brain cells, you probably already know that it's for the same reason that all the little bleeding heart liberals who moan and groan and weep for us to rescue and bring in more Muzzies and Mexican immigrants usually end up packing their bags and fleeing for whiter pastures, shall we say, the second any of these people show up next door to them. So that's the first aspect of this article that makes it kind of laughable to me. I mean, it has to be a rhetorical question. The answer is so damn obvious that even a liberal writing for Vanity Fair must know the answer to it, and must know that anybody before they read this is going to know the answer to it. And yes, I'm aware that authors of articles don't always make the headlines, but whatever. The patently obvious reality to everybody else is if royalty from the United Arab Emirates or any of these wealthy Arab oil countries, if they are this familial disaster, if they are this chaotic presence that, I mean, these are some of the wealthiest people in the world, and they can't behave themselves and they can't be happy with their situation. So if Middle Eastern royalty shows up in the West and is this major disturbance to our way of life, well, what the hell do you think the poor people from these areas are like? And what do you think it's like living next to them? I mean, the damn princes, kings, and queens can't even keep it together. Do you really think the trash from their societies is going to be this amazingly enriching experience to live next to? And if you're getting your panties in a bunch over what I just said there, because your counter-argument is that plenty of white people are annoying white trash to live next to, well, that's exactly my point. We have enough of our own intractable domestic problems. We do not need to be importing more from other countries. But I'm probably getting way ahead of myself. Let's back up a little bit here and start reading some of the article. You're essentially a prisoner. Why do Dubai's princesses keep trying to escape? First, Princess Latifa tried to flee by boat and almost made it to India before being sent back. Then Princess Haya, Sheikh Mohammed's, quote, public wife, unquote, refused to return from England. Now the Sheikh is battling her in court over their children. Subtitle of the photo is Princess Haya bint al-Hussein of Jordan leaves the royal courts of justice, accompanied by her lawyer Fiona Shackleton in London, July 31st, 2019, with Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, if I'm coming anywhere near close to pronouncing that right, at the 3rd day of the Royal Ascot in 2016. Amid the fine horses competing in this year's Royal Ascot, the red-coated postilions driving the Queen of England in her carriage, and the rabble in immense grandstands, one man stands in the event's most exclusive VIP area wearing a black silk hat. This accessory is a rarity for Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who more often wears the traditional headscarf and white robe, or kandora, of Dubai, one of the 7 states that make up the United Arab Emirates. Sheikh Mo, as he's called, has been the leader of Dubai for 13 years. He's thought of as a progressive who bows to the laws of capitalism as well as the mosque, and so unlike the dictators of old, that he writes his own poetry. Muhammad is articulate, erudite, and suave, a Davos type, says a businessman who has dined with him in Dubai. All right, so the article carries on like a Vanity Fair article only can. about how posh his lifestyle is and how much splendor and wonderfulness there is in his accommodations in England, in his property that he owns, his stately manners, his grand estates. So, as I'm reading that, what occurs to me is that there is definitely a flip side to this clash of civilizations. It's not just the local Western hoi polloi or little people who have to put up with the chaotic influence of poor immigrants moving in next door to them. There's also a price to be paid by these Arabic princes, by Arabic royalty. And before I get into that, let me just go ahead and read the part in the article that talks about how, quote, terrible, unquote, these princesses' lives are back in Dubai or wherever. Though women in Dubai are increasingly becoming business and governmental leaders, the Emirates also enforces the law of male guardianship, which means that husbands and fathers control the destiny of their daughters and wives. That is one responsibility I personally would never want. Women can only work with permission of their husbands, must have a lawful excuse for any refusal to submit to sex with their husbands, and any unmarried woman, Emirati or expat, who appears at a hospital pregnant in Dubai can be arrested, including a woman having a miscarriage. Perhaps most importantly for Haya, any woman who divorces her Emirati husband and seeks to remarry must grant full custody of her children to her first spouse. In Dubai's royal family, for women, life may be stricter. You have the fancy title of being a princess, and of course you have people waiting on you hand and foot, but you're essentially a prisoner, says an Arab dissident. You're not supposed to socialize. You don't have a normal life. Though some women in Dubai's royal family are educated abroad and have public profiles, others simply bear children, spend their monthly stipend, and remain quiet. If you want to be in favor, you buy into what the king does. If you're not, you're pushed aside and nobody really cares about you. You're not a high-profile monarchy anyway, says a source with knowledge of Dubai's royals. This was curious on its own, but not as curious as the case of Shamsa's younger sister, Latifa. Known as a daredevil for her expert skydiving, Latifa even appeared on the cover of the local newspaper, according to Jim Crane, author of City of Gold, A Contemporary History of Dubai. Latifa was portrayed as an uber princess who, like her brothers and dad, had taken on the world, doing risky things like skydiving and enjoying life, says Crane. But behind the scenes, Latifa claimed to have a terrible relationship with her mother and barely any relationship with Sheikh Mohammed at all, according to Tina Gihannanen, a Finnish woman who was Latifa's personal capoeira, I think is how you say that. I know it's a Brazilian martial art or something, but I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's capoeira instructor, and who bizarrely became part of Latifa's escape plan. I guess they karate'd their way out of whatever goons Sheikh Mohammed sent after them. Oh my God. The Sheikh's own mother was also named Latifa, which he has said means friendly, kind, and supportive in Arabic. Latifa in life was my mother, my heart and soul. My mother was unique, tranquil, and gentle, he wrote in one of his books. My mother loved all of her children deeply, but I always felt I was closest to her heart. She ate only after we ate, she rested only after we were asleep, and she rejoiced only after our grief had dissipated. But his daughter, this Latifa, would be someone quite different. At the highest level of Arab royalty, men often house their wives in different palaces, and this is thought to be the case with Sheikh Mohammed, says Gihannanen. Mohammed has so many official wives and unofficial wives. All these families are separate and barely know each other, she says. The wives and daughters meet at public events like weddings, where the women's wedding is separate from the men's. How they know each other is very much based on their social media profiles. Oh, this person has a better life, this person gets to travel. At Latifa's family palace, every care was satisfied by Filipino maids, says Gihannanen. She even had her own leisure center with a pool, yoga room, and rooms for hairdressers and manicurists. But she wanted little to do with the five-star lifestyle. She spent most of her time at the family stables, caring for horses and her pet monkey. She has become a vegan, cooking her own curries, and she said she liked animals more than humans, according to Gihannanen. Okay, so that was a lot of exposition on their lifestyles and how they live their lives and all that, or don't get to live their lives. This is the takeaway from me on that. As a Dubai princess, as a United Arab Emirates princess, these are your choices in life. You can travel the world with your prince. You can sit next to the Queen of England at some hoity-toity horse race in the wonderful countryside of England. You can have an outspoken public life. You can have all these wonderful, be in the spotlight kind of aspects to your lives, as long as you do one thing. As long as you make sure it's all for the benefit and to promote the royal family you married into. Not a terribly difficult dynamic to digest and grasp or understand before you get involved with them. And if you don't play by those rules, if you suddenly now want to go off on your own and live this cosmopolitan life where you're fighting unapproved battles not approved by the royal families, you're protesting this and that cause, you're doing all kinds of activist endeavors and self-promotion and all things that do not benefit the royal family and in fact may tarnish their reputation, well, here's what happens to you. You get bottled up and you get put in a palace with people serving you hand and foot, maids, servants, butlers, anything you ever want in that palace out of the public eye. You can have your little horsies and you can race around your horsies on the estate, but you can't be in the public eye because you are violating the pact you agreed to when you married the prince. So you've gone against the contract. You've gone against the agreement. So your harsh punishment is that they're just going to put you away in incredibly lush living arrangements and ignore you. We're really not even going to bother you. But of course, these women, these Arabic princesses, to them, this is like a death sentence because they can't be out there pushing people around, having their say in things, using the royal money the way they want to use it, and so on. The royal money that they never made, the royal money that they just have access to because they married into the family and or were born into a wealthy family. What they're looking for is they're looking to usurp control of the family and the family's finances. They want to be in control of the family. They want to paint the family's reputation the way they want to paint it. They want to be this skydiving princess out there, this feminist hero. Well, sorry, but that may not work very well for what the patriarchs of the family you got involved with have in mind. Right or wrong, you knew that going in. The article even mentions this, and later on it even talks about how it's very possible that some of these princesses are making a big deal out of nothing. And let me jump ahead and read that bit of the article. Between Latifah's strange escape on the yacht, which we will get to in a moment or two here, Mary Robinson fiasco, and Haya's departure, many people have connected the dots and speculated that Haya must have indeed found out something about Latifah that she couldn't, quote, put up with or stand for, unquote. And yet Haya left with so much money, almost $40 million, that others wonder if she and Sheikh Mohammed hadn't actually worked out their separation before she departed. There was some friction over the marriage in Dubai. Haya wanted to open institutes and travel the world, and two sources say that Sheikh Mohammed's sons were not enthusiastic about these pursuits. As the Sheikh grows older, those sons have more influence. Haya could just be an opportunist looking to leave her husband, who saw an opening to gain moral high ground by making everyone think she fled in solidarity with Latifah. Okay, so that's the stupidity of these Arabic or Middle Eastern princesses, whatever. I mean, it's not... I'm sure this is going on with most, if not all, of these royal families from the Middle East, from Jordan, from where, talk about the differences between them. This article talks about how some of them are more progressive than others. It's all a bunch of crap. So this is the idolized, romanticized, ignorant version of Islam that we get pushed on us from, feminist progressives, the usual suspects. Whereas the truth of the matter is Islam always has been, always will be this dinosaur, archaic 6th or 7th century ideology that is so retrograde. It has its elite adherents, its royalty, assuming that they have every right to this day in the modern world to hunt other human beings down and kidnap them and suffer no consequences from these actions. And we'll get to this in a little bit. It's just every once in a while you get somebody who they're calling this Sheikh progressive. He has 6 wives. Which one of you progressive feminists is going to happily be part of a harem of 6 wives? None of you. He's not progressive. You're all a bunch of idiots for calling him that. What he's doing is he's becoming this poet, as the article says. He's becoming this progressive-seeming poet with this flowery language, and he is trying to play the West to look like a hero to us as well, is what he's trying. He's playing both sides of the coin. Back home, he has the royal final say, but in the West, oh, look how progressive I am. Look what I let my wife do. I let her wear Western clothing when we go to a horse race and blah, blah, blah. But as I said, there's a flip side. And here's the point where it's no longer all fun and games, and it gets a little sticky for Sheikh Mohammed. Because I'm reminded of that Gaddafi quote. And let me see if I can. Give me a second here. I'm gonna try to find that Gaddafi quote. And this is from a speech he gave. I finally found it here. This is from a speech he gave in April 2006. We have 50 million Muslims in Europe. Now, this is in 2006. Remember, there are many more Muslims in Europe now. We have 50 million Muslims in Europe. There are signs that Allah will grant Islam victory in Europe without swords, without guns, without conquest. Will turn it into a Muslim continent within a few decades. And make no mistake, this is how all of these Middle Eastern politicians, all of this royalty in the Middle East, in Africa, this is how all of them think. They may not always be, making outrageous quotes or bold quotes like Gaddafi, but they all think this. They think that mighty, unstoppable Islam is going to take over European lands, is going to take over America without firing a single shot. Well, they're finding out that they can, when they get to the West, they can't even control their little female family members. And let's get to the part in the article where Sheikh What's-His-Face has a little difficulty with one of his daughters. In 2001, according to The Guardian, Sheikh Mohammed's daughter, Sheikha Shamsa bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, a tall, dark-eyed college student and equestrian who once came in behind Princess Anne in a long-distance horse race, abandoned her black Range Rover near the stables at the family's Surrey estate. When the vehicle was discovered the following morning, Sheikh Mohammed took a helicopter from another racing area to join the hunt. Shamsa was eventually found in Cambridge, after which she was reportedly snatched by bodyguards and returned to Dubai. Her father followed up by moving 80 horses off the property and firing nearly all of the estate staff. When this news spilled into the press via Shamsa hiring a London barrister and also reportedly calling British police from Dubai, there was an outcry. In London, the government opened an investigation into whether she had been taken out of the country, quote, against her will, unquote. But the investigation apparently languished, and Shamsa remained in Dubai, though she has not appeared in a photograph circulating on the internet or elsewhere in the intervening 18 years. Welcome to the Western world. Turns out that all the little feminists and let's say cosmopolitan lawyers are going to be whispering in the ears of your daughters and your wives, and the influence is going to be so strong that it's going to bleed all the way back to your home country. Because Sheikh Mohammed, seems you had a problem with another daughter too, didn't you? Latifa apparently bought a book written by an apparent French former spy, Hervé Joubert. The title of the book was Escape from Dubai, and that's exactly what she planned to do. According to Ji Huan, on February 24th, 2018, she and Latifa had a royal driver drop them off at a cafe where they often met for breakfast. In the bathroom, Latifa took off her black abaya, applied makeup, and put on sunglasses. She also dropped her cell phone into a garbage can. Then Ji Huan says the two of them drove to the border of Oman, where they met Joubert, who would pilot the yacht, and one of his crew who had brought along jet skis. They rode the skis about 15 miles out to their boat. It was very rough sea in the middle of the ocean, just the craziest day ever, says Ji Huan. They planned to make it to Sri Lanka and after that, the United States. Latifa had thought about heading for the United Kingdom, but was worried that her father's connections would make it hard for the country to allow her to remain, Giulietta says. This motley crew sailed for 8 days, eating granola bars because there were too many roaches in the kitchen to cook. Nervously, via a slow-moving internet connection, they tried to get in touch with Western journalists who might spread the word that they needed protection. They thought the satellite connection they were using, which came from the U.S., would not be penetrated. But about 30 miles off the coast of Goa, India, with Giulietta and Latifa below deck in their bunk, they heard gunshots. They locked the door, but the Indian Coast Guard threw a grenade. Their cabin began filling with smoke. They made it up the stairs to the deck, staggering from coughing so hard. Upstairs, the sky was black, except for the tiny red laser dots of the guns that Indian men were pointing at them. Okay, so that's the problem he had with 2 of his daughters. I'm sure he's had more problems with his daughters in the past. And I imagine some of these daughters are married as well. So, it's not just the father having problems with his daughters. It's also whoever these women's husbands are having difficulty with their wives. So I think what all of these male members of Arabic royalty think is going to happen when they introduce their wives, their daughters, their female family members to the West is that these crones are going to get out of their hair. It's, these women are, they're begging to start trouble. That's just what they want to do. So what these idiot princes do is they figure, okay, I'll give them a cosmopolitan taste of the West. I'll set them up with a horse farm just outside of London, and I'll take them to horse races with the Queen, and I'll do this, that, the other thing. And they'll be so happy, they'll get off my arse. But unfortunately, once these women start getting influenced by the Western feminists around them, they start seeing all the divorces going down and all the Western wives running away with their husband's money after cheating on their husbands. They see what Western women get away with. And they're not going to let it go. They want that. They want that freedom. They don't want their lives spent for the good of the royal family. As soon as they see that Western feminist freedom, they're gone, man. They are done with being the wife of a Saudi, of an emirate, of a wherever Jordan prince or king or whatever. They're done with it. So you have, the Western liberals thinking that these third worlders, these Arabs, they're going to come into the West and it's going to be a wonderful utopia of diversity and enrichment. It turns out that the damn guy is in a helicopter hunting down family members, probably breaking basically all of England's human rights laws. Not even human rights laws, they're basic laws. I mean, he's hunting somebody down and kidnapping them. And the liberals think his presence is going to be a positive thing for the country. It's just so bizarre. So some of the time he spends in England, he's sitting in royal bleachers next to the Queen, with or without his own princess, wife, queen, whatever. He's doing this one day. He's hobnobbing with, the elite of British society. And however many days later, he's got a pack of bounty hunter bodyguards working with him when he's in a helicopter hunting down human beings and kidnapping them in England today, the present day. And liberals are telling you it's a good idea to bring these people into the West. It's the absurdity. I don't know how the absurdity is lost on them, but somehow it is because they're liberals. And this guy thinks that the West is going to pacify his wife. Meanwhile, it's just going to turn his wife more and more against him. So let's get to an example of one of his wives running away with his fortune and his children. Sheikh Mohammed normally attends the race with his, quote, public wife, unquote, Princess Haya bint al-Hussein, whose father, King Hussein, was the truly progressive leader of Jordan for decades. Haya, the first Arab woman equestrian to compete in the Olympics, representing Jordan in show jumping during the 2000 Sydney Summer Games, seemed like the perfect wife for the sheikh, a paragon of the New Arabia. Independent but also devoted to her man. Educated at the University of Oxford, and with highlights in her hair, she's also the first woman in Jordan to own a driver's license for heavy machinery. She wanted to be able to transport her own horses to the track. Haya is very intelligent, says Sven Holmberg, who served with her on the International Federation for Equestrian Sports. He claims that she would arrive to meetings via the Sheikh's jet and donated millions toward a home in Lausanne, Switzerland, for the Federation's use, though Holmberg says he clashed with her over the use of controversial drugs in the sport, which she apparently supported more than him. Given the general swoon that Haya and Sheikh Mohammed seem to be in, the surprise today is not that Sheikh Mohammed arrived out of his usual garb. The surprise is that he's alone, without not only Haya, but also any of his other wives, which have numbered at least 6. He's also reportedly fathered 30 children. In fact, shortly after the Ascot this past June, news began pinging around the world that Haya had fled Dubai months earlier, and 2 of Sheikh Mohammed's daughters had also experienced duress. One of them, Sheikha Latifa bint Mohammed Al Maktoum, 33, attempted to escape Dubai in 2018 on a boat registered in the US and piloted by a French-American captain. And in yet another theory, British papers made much of Haya's alleged closeness to a bodyguard. In a poem about an unnamed woman Sheikh Mohammed put online around the same time that she disappeared, he wrote, "O you who betrayed the most precious of trust, my sorrow revealed your game," he writes. "You loosened the reins of your horse." This guy is a sap. Okay, so his wife Haya runs off with his kids, gets herself a likely feminist lawyer. Basically, she's probably going to end up owning most of his assets in England when all is said and done. She ran off with millions, tens of millions of his dollars, and she is most likely doing this because she's in love with one of her bodyguards. And, she wants to live the feminist Western lifestyle and, bang her bodyguards. That's what she wants to do. She doesn't want to deal with, a lifestyle that's focused on promoting the royal family. That's boring. She's gotten a taste of the West. So, all right. I'm not going to belabor this video. It was supposed to be a quick one. And just this whole article, as I'm reading it, I encourage you, I'll link to it down below in the description box. I encourage you to read this article. If you have any interest in this clash of cultures, clash of civilizations, and the effect it has on people, it's just, there's a reason why humans in general tend to set up different societies that benefit their people and don't exactly benefit people of other cultures and other races. This didn't happen by sheer mistake. There was a lot of randomness in the development of modern civilization as we look around and see it. The Western world, the Middle Eastern world, and countries in Asia. There is certainly a lot of randomness and human frailty involved in it, and things could have turned out a lot different. And liberals, I think a lot of their worldview tries to take advantage, tries to make a big deal out of that aspect of it, and very much tries to downplay the fact that there is a lot of inarguable inevitability to it as well. There's a lot in us that's innate, inherent, that manifests itself in the societies we create. It's not all random chance. And this article it really brought it out to me, how glaring it is that societies just aren't going to mix well. There is going to be, even for the extremely wealthy, for the elite, there are going to be repercussions that are just disastrous. And in some ways, maybe especially so for the elite and the wealthy, because they have access to finances that allow them to behave in completely erratic manners and suffer little or no consequences in any real sense. Sure, they're ostracized from the royal family, But they didn't care to be. They found out that they got a taste of the Western world and feminism and what women get away with in the Western world without a shred of accountability or responsibility. And they're like, screw it. I can just show that family the hand and go live this wonderfully cosmopolitan and quote free, unquote, feminist life in the West. So it's just this article really brought it out to me how absurd this multicultural experiment is. It's on every level. It's just a straight up disaster. It's a disaster for Arabs and their societies. It's a disaster for our society. But you know who this strange adherence to multiculturalism and diversity works out really nicely for? The handful of spoiled Islamic princesses who want to bang their bodyguards, go skydiving, and spend their husband's money in a million different ways that does nothing to benefit the royal families they chose to be part of. For them, this situation works out really, really nicely. They get to take ill-gotten Islamic oil money and spend it all in the feminist wonderland of the West. It's so absurd and so pointless that I had to read this article and laugh. So I encourage you to go ahead and check the link that I'll put in the description box down below. And if it's not too disturbing what you're reading, just try to step back and have a good time reading it, because it is, on one level, very, very humorous. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next upload.